Hello all and welcome. Today we'll begin with a simple but a powerful idea. Your highest moral value, in addition to defining what the rest of your values are and how they should be ordered and what are the limits, is also the ideal version of yourself. It's not just a list of beliefs, it is a person that you are trying to become, a version of yourself who would act rightly, consistently, and with purpose according to whatever set of values you have. And if everything went as it should, if all of your values aligned and were lived out fully, you would become that version of yourself. But it doesn't stop there. Your highest moral value also includes the kind of world that this ideal version of you would try to create. So ethics aren't just internal, they're also external. They shape not only how you treat people, but also what kind of systems, policies, and structures you support and reject. Now here's the tension. Most of us live in massive systems, governments, corporations, economic structures, and it often feels like we don't matter individually. And you might think, I'm just one voter, my vote won't change anything. Or I'm just one customer, my support or boycott of a multi-billion-dollar company isn't going to do anything. Or the system is broken, what can I possibly do? And mathematically speaking, you're not wrong. In most cases, your individual contribution will not visibly shift the system. But ethically, this attitude misses the point. Even if your actions don't change the world, they do shape who you are. So if your highest moral value demands that you vote, boycott, speak up, then failing to act just because the outcome is uncertain is moving in a direction away from who it is that you're trying to be. And this is where rational ethics enters the picture. Is the benefit of acting worth the cost, even if the only benefit is to your own soul? The answer to that question says everything about your moral structure. Now think of this. I live in Chicago. If I refrain from selling drugs or committing violence, will that reduce the total crime in the city? Well, not by any noticeable amount. However, it matters to me. I don't want to be a drug dealer. I don't want to hurt people. I'm not trying to change the crime rate. I'm trying to be the kind of person who doesn't engage in those behaviors. In the same way, your vote, your purchases, and your stance, these aren't about mass-scale effectiveness. They are about moral clarity and personal alignment. But sometimes, when lots of individuals independently act on their values, the results do scale into real-world change. So for example, the fall of the Berlin Wall. Ordinary East German citizens began holding weekly protests, and they were small at first and then grew fairly massive. There was no central leadership, no master plan, but the crowd grew from hundreds to hundreds of thousands until the regime collapsed. The wall didn't fall because of one person, it fell because individuals decided to act on their own and then together. And here's an economic example. A couple of years ago, after a controversial marketing decision, Bud Light faced a spontaneous boycott. There was no formal campaign, no national movement, just individual customers choosing to stop buying. And their sales plummeted. Shelf space shrank, brand value dropped, and one person didn't make that happen. Millions of small decisions did. Now, why are we talking about all of this? Well, when faced with a problem that is too large to fix ourselves, whether it's homelessness or poverty or climate change or inequality, all sorts of things that fall under the business ethics scale of things, we often say, well, someone should do something. And very quickly that turns into, well, the government should fix it. And here's where we connect to Professor Anthony Davies and his public choice economics. Davies' core argument is this: there is no mythical creature called the government. It is not an abstract solution factory. It's just people, individuals, making decisions. So if we want to understand how the government works and how it doesn't work, we have to understand how people work. And that's what public choice economics does. Davies argues that government officials, like all humans, respond to incentives. They act in ways that benefit their careers, protect their interests, or please their constituents. In other words, they're catering to their own highest moral value. And if the incentive structure doesn't reward solving a problem, or if it rewards not solving it, then the problem will stay unsolved. And here is where the analogy to corporations kicks in. Yes, governments are monopolies in a way that private companies aren't, but both are still collections of people responding to incentives. So if we want to get something done in business or in government, we have to start by mapping the incentive structure. That's the moral and strategic reality. Now, is Davies too cynical? Yeah, maybe. But ask yourselves, can you name a government program that worked as advertised, stayed on time and under budget, didn't create unintended problems, and operated transparently and effectively? If you can't, the way I can't, then maybe Davies isn't being all that cynical. Maybe he's just describing a reality. A reality where systems aren't broken because people are evil or stupid. They're broken because they're actually working exactly as designed, just according to the wrong incentive structure. And here's a practical example for you. The United States government is currently $36 trillion in debt. That means that we're not broke. We need another $36 trillion in our bank account just to be broke. And in fact, we are also projected to add another $2 trillion to the debt just this year. And that's not happening because nobody in Washington knows how to do math. It's happening because the system rewards overspending, because everyone in the system is working for their own rational benefit. If we want to talk about ethical solutions to large-scale problems, we have to be honest about how people behave and how incentives work. Saying, well, people should just be ethical isn't really enough. Everyone already thinks they're being ethical. The trick is aligning systems with values, and that starts with understanding how things really work. So if you find yourself disagreeing with Davies, ask yourself, why? Is it because you think that people are better than he suggests? That they are more just, more altruistic? And if so, great. But remember that those are your value claims, and they're often rooted in religious or philosophical ideas about justice, fairness, and morality. So now the question becomes, are your values consistent from issue to issue? And that's what this course is about, identifying your values and testing them against real-world problems and making sure that from week to week, you're building a coherent system for yourself. Because ethics that change with the topic aren't ethics, they're just preferences. And if your highest moral value is going to mean anything, it has to last, not just when it's easy, but even when it's hard. So just think to last week as we covered religious ethics and the idea that nobody should be duplicitous and trying to cheat their customers was very commonly taken by students to be as an unreasonable requirement for businesses to operate. And now, this week, looking at the government, we're suddenly assuming that people shouldn't cheat and be duplicitous. Either one of those is fine, but your ideas do have to make sense together. In other words, you can think of it this way. If you took all of your answers to all the things that we read for the entirety of the course, are you going to find contradictions? And if so, then you need to figure out where those contradictions come from and work them out, because an incoherent system just doesn't work.